This video is brought to you by Prize Picks. Listen, you and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. And you guys see my takes on this channel. I'm right all the time. And listen, football's back, baby, and my fantasy team is already in the shitter. So to spice the games up a little bit, I like to play on Prize Picks, and it's simple and fun to get into the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections. And as you get your players right, you can cash in. Just build a few lineups this season and see if the wins start rolling in. I'm looking currently at my favorites this weekend. Easily the Travis Kelce, and I'm pairing this with CD and Jamar with the bounce back weekend. And remember that projections change every single week, so you gotta check the app for the latest squares. Prize Picks is available in over 40 states like California, Texas, and Georgia. Plus, if your player gets hurt in the first half and doesn't come back, they give you an injury reboot, which means it doesn't count as a loss. And Avi, withdrawals are fast, they're reliable, with secure options like Venmo and Apple Pay. So, if your ball knowledge is elite, you might as well turn it into some cash. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to go ahead, download the app, link in the description down below, and use the code FATAsian to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code FATAsian to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring this video. Now, back to the show. Certain players were made to play in a system. They thrive in structure. And then there are players that exist for chaos. And chaos is a ladder. Who is the mercurial 26-year-old who just signed for the world's most popular club in the world's most popular game? Many words have been used to describe him. Unorthodox, improvisational, and of course, chaotic. From humble beginnings in Brazil to now the biggest club in Europe, he is a talismanic talent who is about to step foot onto the theater of dreams. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let me take you back to where it all started, where we find most young Brazilian talents, growing up in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro.
This is Brazil!
Except, Matheus Cunha would know nothing about that because he actually grew up upper middle class. But this isn't just jokes. He actually was like a semi-rich kid. He was the son of 2 dentists, and he grew up in a comfortable, nice suburb close to Rio, but far from the favelas that produced the likes of R9 Ronaldo, Richarlison, and Gabriel Jesus. He was kind of a rich kid, and by all accounts, Cunha was also an excellent student. This dude grew up in the suburbs with dentist parents and excelled at school. By every metric, this man should have turned out to be a super nerd. But like most things about Matheus Cunha, nothing is ever quite that predictable. At a young age, he found a love for futsal. He grew up idolizing the great Ronaldinho, who was also another futsal prodigy. As a youngster, he would practice countless hours on the futsal courts, trying to emulate the elasticos, the flair, and the close control of his idol, and doing it all with the bright smile. You can still see bits of that unbridled creativity in his game today. But he was not only beholden to the Brazilian greats. Even at a young age, he also idolized European legends like Zinedine Zidane and Dennis Bergkamp, or as I remember him, as Dennis Bergkamp.
Frank de Boer speelt de bal. Heel goed naar Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp neemt de bal aan. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp.
Yes, I've had this clip seared into my memory, and now, so shall you. You're welcome. Matheus Cunha was a prodigious talent on the futsal courts, and his talent would not go unnoticed. At the age of 14, he was accepted into the prestigious Coritiba Youth Academy, and by 17, he was fast-tracked into training with the first team, which got him onto the radar of many European scouts. Just 1 year later, at 18, all the top Brazilian clubs were salivating over him. But instead of joining Brazilian giants like Santos or Corinthians, he once again didn't let them know his next move, as he transferred to Switzerland. A curious move at the time, but a masterstroke in retrospect, as Cunha was instantly a star, bringing his Brazilian flair and dynamism to the cold pitches of the far north. And in his first and only season with Swiss club Sion, he led them in goals, scoring 10 and assisting 8 in 29 games played, a tremendous return on a teenager. This scintillating season would see him win the Young Player of the Year award in Switzerland, and just some of the goals that he was scoring. He was no tap-in merchant. No. Sion is where he would announce to the world that he was capable of scoring a worldie at any moment. Yeah, he had it all in his locker, even at 18. Operating as a second striker and attacking midfielder, he was given the freedom to roam and float into spaces, turn, shoot, or create. He was brilliant to watch. And once again, his audacious talents would not go unnoticed, and it wasn't before long that Europe's top clubs came sniffing around. And just a summer later, in 2018, Matheus Cunha would join Europe's newest premier talent factory, the energy drink La Masia, known as RB Leipzig, who, over the previous decade, had made it their club ethos to snatch up every promising young talent across Europe and hoard them on the roster like smog greedily sitting on his mountain of gold. He was brought to the club by the professor of German football, Ralf Rangnick, the man who invented the Gegenpress and was mentor to the likes of Thomas Tuchel and Jurgen Klopp. He said this of Cunha before they signed him, and I quote, "Matheus Cunha is a highly interesting striker who, with his age, speed, and offensive drive, fits very much into our philosophy. Especially in finishing, he shows great qualities." It was Ralph's vision to play him as a false nine, giving him the freedom to float around where his instincts took him, while simultaneously learning the high-pressing style that has become the modern meta of football today. Under the intense pressing style of Ralf Rangnick and later Julian Nagelsmann, Cunha was forced to evolve. He had to become more than a low-key trickster. He matured to a more complete forward, winning the Bundesliga Rookie of the Month award early on in his time at Leipzig, and even scoring this beauty that would go on to win the Bundesliga Goal of the Month, as well as getting a nomination for the Puskas Award that year. And what a goal. A complete showcase of the 19-year-old's locker. Over an on-rushing keeper, my man hit him with the Mortal Kombat fatality. A sumptuous goal, and perhaps a glimpse of the star that Cunha could eventually become. But for all the flash and fury, Cunha could never lock down a spot in that starting 11. Leipzig already had Timo Werner and Yusuf Poulsen, two productive and firmly entrenched starters in their lineup. And while they saw Cunha as a star for the future, Nagelsmann never quite could figure out how to fit him into the team consistently. So desperate for playing time, after only 18 months, Cunha would once again be on the move. And in the winter of 2020, Hertha Berlin would make Matheus Cunha their marquee signing for a club that had many new investors with incredibly lofty ambitions. And let's just say, the environment he was walking into was crazy chaotic. But we know anything about Matheus Cunha and chaos. For the Brazilian,
chaos is a ladder.
Almost immediately, he became the sole creative hub of the team, with the fans quickly dubbing him as the lighthouse in the storm. While the club around him was in constant turmoil, changing coaches, defensive meltdowns, and internal pressure, Cunha was the one constant beacon of hope, driving the team forward, creating chances from nothing, and scoring some absolute bangers. He was their everything. Every attack went through him, and finally given starter minutes, he would reach his potential and become a true star in Deutschland. While his individual highlights were spectacular, his overarching story at Hertha Berlin was one of immense back pain from carrying the team so goddamn hard. Yeah, Hertha was almost always in a relegation fight during his time there, and his frustrations about the team's success would bleed out onto the pitch. And this is kind of where it would start his reputation for being a bit of a hothead, but who could blame him? He was trying to do everything himself, because often he had to do everything himself. He literally was the meme of the Bugatti in the trailer park, and it was a bipolar season for the Brazilian. While he was finally becoming a superstar on the European stage, simultaneously, the team around him was crumbling. His frustration, combined with his obvious world-class potential, made it clear to everyone that his time at Hertha Berlin would not be very long. He simply was too good to be on a team that was perpetually in a relegation battle. And that will become relevant again later, but for now, once again, after another 18-month stint at a club, Cunha would be on the move once more. And this time, he'll be joining one of the most successful clubs in all of Europe over the last decade, and undoubtedly his biggest challenge yet, as in the summer of 2021, Matheus Cunha would join Diego Simeone in the crucible that is Atletico Madrid. But before that, Cunha would go on a little side quest in the land of anime. Yes, I'm talking about the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, where he joined the Brazilians that were defending champions from Rio in 2016. They featured the likes of Richarlison, Anthony, and the mummified 38-year-old corpse of Dani Alves. There, he was a crucial force in a Brazilian team that went back-to-back for gold medal wins, scoring 3 goals, which was good enough for third in the competition, and crucially, providing the golden assist that won it for Brazil in the final against a very talented Spain side. And just like that, Matheus Cunha will always be a football champion. But fresh off the greatest accomplishment of his young career, would go on to join Atletico Madrid side that had just won the La Liga title. The narrative was that Matheus was going to inject some fresh blood, a dynamic force that could provide Diego Simeone a more unpredictable attack in his often rigid defensive system. But from the outset, it just wasn't the right fit. Cunha was always at his best when he's roaming free, taking risks, driving toward defenses, and, creating chaos. But ironically, who doesn't love chaos, specifically defensively? Diego Simeone. My man's whole philosophy works because of his famously rigid system. A system that prioritizes shape above all else, with forwards having very specific positional responsibilities. So when Cunha would take risks, which occasionally would lead to him losing the ball, he was putting his team under unneeded pressure in the eyes of Simeone. Which now, in retrospect, it begs the question, why did you even bring him in? Maybe you thought you could coach some tendencies out of him, but my man's a peacock. You gotta let him fly. Now, as everywhere he went, he did show flashes of brilliance. But Cunha would remain largely on the bench. He started just 14 of his 37 La Liga appearances, and you could see his frustration. By the winter of 2022, the writing was on the wall, and when Wolverhampton Wanderers came in with a loan offer with an additional obligation to buy for $50 million, both parties said adios. And just like that, Cunha would embark on his biggest challenge yet, a move to the most watched, the most physically demanding, the most competitive league in the world, the Premier League. Now for context, Wolves made Cunha their all-time record signing. Yeah, Wolves fans had a little bit of sticker shock on that one. And with that massive price tag came massive pressure. And to be honest, his start in England was pretty dreadful. You could see it. He was forcing it, snatching at chances, trying to make something out of nothing. And as a result, he went his first 11 Premier League games without scoring a single goal. He nearly doubled up on the 007 memes. He ended the season with only 2 goals and 2 assists. The whispers of flop became a loud, jeering roar. After not cutting in La Liga, this horror star in England had him questioning. Maybe this was what he was. Yet another promising young talent Brazilian who never quite reached his potential. Sad. But yeah, all he needed was the summer to adjust, because he had a sensational bounce back in his first full season in England, scoring 14 and assisting 8 in all competitions. Things were finally looking like they were back on track for the Brazilian. So obviously, chaos came a-knocking. And boom, Wolves manager Julen Lopetegui sucker punched the club, leaving unexpectedly right before the start of the 2023-2024 season. This obviously left them crippled, and many bookmakers in the nation put them at the top odds of being relegated. New manager Gary O'Neill was handed what was mockingly called at the time a relegation squad, and then they proceeded to have an absolutely catastrophic start to the season, losing 7 out of their first 8 matches. They didn't win a game until the 11th match of the season, and at the halfway point, they sat 19th in the table with only 9 points to show for themselves. And thus, Gary O'Neill was sacked 6 days before Christmas, cold-blooded. In his place stepped former Olympiacos and Porto manager Victor Pereira, and things didn't get much better, but amidst the chaos of a relegation battle, one player knew what to do. Cunha had played these games before. It was during a relegation battle where he put a team on his back, and that's absolutely what he did. He refused to let Wolves die. Gary O'Neill didn't do too much right during his time at Wolverhampton, but the one thing he did do was move Matheus Cunha back from a winger position into a central attacking position and focus the attack through him. It was the role that made him so prolific in Switzerland and Germany. And while it didn't bear much fruit in the first half of the season, Victor Pereira would unleash Cunha over the second half, and the Brazilian became one of the most productive attackers in the Premier League that season, as he was not only Wolves' top scorer, but also their chief creator. And honestly, he was their everything, winning penalties with his intricate dribbling in the box, providing assists with crosses, cutbacks, and clever through balls, defending from the front with an incredible work rate, and carrying the ball from deep positions to relieve pressure. As Wolves would go on to take 32 points in their next 18 league games, including a 6-match winning streak that all but sealed their survival. For reference, this Man United fan pledged not to cut his hair until Man United have won 5 games in a row since February of 2024, and now he looks like this. And Matheus Cunha was able to accomplish this with the relegation Wolves side. By that point, his record transfer fee now looked like an absolute bargain. He would go on to finish the season with a personal best 17 goals and 6 assists in all competitions. He was invaluable to Wolves. He didn't just save them from going down, he saved them from being boring, from being predictable. Because just look at some of the absolute bangers he put in. He transformed the mood at Molineux from one of anxiety to unbridled joy. And yes, there were a couple of flare-ups of his famous temper. He received the red card for his tussle with Bournemouth's Kirkes, And then there was the incident where he elbowed a coach and then ripped his glasses off. That was pretty funny. But what's crazy is despite his reputation, he has never received a straight red card in Europe's top 5 leagues, which is frankly unbelievable. But I digress. After his second full season at Wolves, Matheus Cunha had become a proper superstar in the Premier League. And once again, he was the Bugatti in the trailer park. And so, on June 1st of 2025, Manchester United made him the first marquee signing of the Ruben Amorim rebuild, where he is now still kind of a Bugatti in a trailer park, because Man United is ass. But, you know, that's where the story ends for now. And as a long-tortured, mentally unstable Man United fan, I hope his best seasons are yet to come. But if I've learned anything about Matheus Cunha and his life story, it's to expect the unexpected. And yeah, that's going to be it from me. If you like this video, please go ahead, leave a like. Helps me infinitely in this godforsaken algorithm. Thank you to Alex for helping me edit this video. If you want to hire him, his links are in the description down below. And of course, I'd like to thank all my patrons who help make videos like this possible. Shouts to the OGs, Elm, Robert Matai, Peter Barr, Neon Bar, Kyle Stockton, Michael Sentz, Isaac Martinez, Duran, Higham, Miles Bard, Natus Piddlesmith, Cowhow, Jason Eatman, The Fat Austrian, Valente Vasquez, Movadoc, and of course the double goat, Sandra Jeremy. Thank you guys all for watching, and until next time, love y'all.